Now then, I've slowed down because, wow. So before I enter this remarkable destination, Sicily used to be home to the largest military base in southern Europe. It was around about 25, 30 years ago. Since then, said military base has closed, it is abandoned. The locals refer to it as a ghost town. It has been reclaimed by Mother Nature until today, where Bentley, somehow, have got the keys. Oh, what is this? This is crazy. It's like Bentley meets The Walking Dead. It's a spooky place, but it's still got a hell of a stretch of tarmac through it. Wow. This is unbelievable. What a ridiculous location. It's quite scary though. It's quite a weird place. I've done some things on some launches, but never have I ragged a beautiful super luxury GT through a ghost town. Through a warehouse. What is going on here? To think they would have stored some sort of missile in here for sure. The only missile here today is definitely this W12. What is that? How is that doing that? What? How are we not getting punctures through here? This is literally an abandoned landscape. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Oh, the brake. This is where the brakes are really applying themselves into this. Yep. Yes. And out the other side. It is so good to be back. And when I say back, when was the last time you tuned into this channel and I was on anything other than UK tarmac? Over 12 months ago since we were on a car drive launch experience abroad. So this in itself is a monumental moment. However, today, this is where things begin to count for the Bentley Continental GT Speed, of which I'm delighted to finally welcome you to on the road. You see, I had the grace and fortune of being able to drive and share with you what the Continental GT Speed feels like on Silverstone circuit. What a machine. I know that's a really abstract place in which to experience this car, but actually I was quite proud of Bentley to be bold enough to think that they could launch a 2.2 ton Ultra Grand Tourer on the full Silverstone International Formula One circuit. That probably speaks more volumes about how confident they are in the dynamics of this car than anything. However, on that day, we were asked 3 questions. Firstly, is this the pinnacle of the Continental GT lineage? Secondly, is this the most dynamic Bentley road car ever made? And thirdly, is this the best 2-door Grand Tourer in the world? Now, I think we probably answered 1 and 2 when we were at Silverstone. You see, with 650 horsepower, an 8-speed twin-clutch gearbox, 664 pounds-feet of torque, and a dramatically revised chassis in the ways of a E-diff, rear-wheel steer, a revised or sort of tweaked 48-volt anti-roll architecture, and importantly, the world's largest production car carbon ceramic brakes ever fitted to something with number plates. All of those things added up to an experience where you could actually chuck this thing around the Silverstone circuit. However, number 3, is it the best two-door Grand Tourer in the world? Well, that had to wait for this moment right here. And I think before we dive into it, it's important to acknowledge something, which is, in all likelihood, based on the way the world's going, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to suggest that what we're sitting in right now might just be a landmark moment for the Bentley brand. You see, for all of the phenomenal driving characteristics of the Continental GT Speed, what we're sat in is a turbocharged W12, 12-cylinder engine. Now, the way the future of the car world is going, and just the announcements and speculation that Bentley have made around their product range, the chances are that what we're sat in right now is the last unassisted internal combustion engine of this magnitude. What I mean by unassisted is no hybrid drivetrains. You see, Bentley are going quite heavily towards electrification in the terms of hybrid drive assist in all of their future models, and the chances are the next time we see, or if we ever even do see, a W12 in a Bentley again, the chances are it's going to have some sort of battery assisted power connected to it. So for all of its wowness and beauty and grace and incredible dynamics, this is an important moment. This is one of those cars that you might just want to buy because it's going to be the last of its kind. And what a last of its kind it is. Let's just talk about what this thing is really like on the road. You see, truth be told, before I turn on the camera and talk to you guys, I have a sneaky pedal in it myself first. Get a good feeling of what I'm really about to say. How much conviction can I give to you through that camera to qualify, is this car really that good? Well, I can tell you I've had the honour of being able to spend quite a lot of time in both the V8 and the W12 Continental GT, and while those platforms are phenomenal and they do a great job of grand touring, this thing, to read the upgrades on paper, you would be forgiven for thinking it's a sort of mild tweak. But this is truly the result of something that is greater than the sum of its parts. The agility of this, what a difference the rear wheel steering, calibration, the E-diff, the LSD of this has made to the driving dynamics. And this is the important thing. We've got to remember here, contextualize what we're in. This is well over 2 tons. And the way this thing decides to position itself down a road which really you would typically associate with the likes of a GR Yaris is quite remarkable indeed. I mean, it's a big boy car with 650 horsepower, and I'm approaching corners with the kind of delight that I'll be completely transparent about, the kind of delight that I've not historically associated with a Bentley. You see, I associate a Bentley with tearing apart major roads, grand touring, wafting on down to the south of France, and sure, if you found yourself on the Col de Torini on the way down, all the better for it. But on this, you'd set your sat-nav to avoid motorways. Such is the driving delight and sheer dynamics of this thing. Now, with 664 pounds-feet of torque, that, for context, is 900 Newton-meters of it. The ball of energy underneath your right foot is actually a malleable force. It is something to behold. Now, despite the fact that it is all connected, this drivetrain is connected to an 8-speed twin-clutch gearbox, I find myself changing gear for no reason at all, just because of the calibration the engineers have done on this drivetrain. And let me just say once more, the engineers at Bentley do need a round of applause, because to make a twin clutch box suit the characteristics of a Grand Tourer is a very tricky thing, particularly with something that has as much torque as this. The drive select modes down here on the central console that go from Bentley mode sport and comfort, and custom if you want, are one of the best calibrated in the industry. What I mean by that is when you flick that dial and go from comfort all the way over to sport, it is probably one of the most dramatic changes of driving feel that you can feel in a car. Oftentimes you'll press the button down here on various marques and, you know, they'll do things, but it's not always like a massive character change. Sure, if you go up to something like an F12 TDF or an 812 Superfast, the characteristics get quite spicy, but you never really see it in the remit of a luxury Grand Tourer. Now this is where the Continental GT Speed has really evolved things, and interestingly, this is where it gets really cool. You see, because we associate Bentleys as being luxury wafters that glide along on a bed of air, what you don't want to do from your speed experience is compromise comfort or Bentley mode, which is exactly what they haven't done. Comfort and Bentley mode are identical calibration profiles to what they are in the standard Continental GT, which is fantastic because that makes it quiet and waft and ride along and absorb the creases and folds in the adverse conditions that I find myself in on these Sicilian roads wonderfully. However, where things quite literally take a step change is when you put this thing into sport, and you could hear it. One of the reasons you can hear it is because this W12 is connected to a titanium Akrapovic exhaust system, and the throttle response, the torque response, crikey, the way this thing picks up momentum. You look down at the speedo and you're like, yeah, I shouldn't be here. But despite the fact that I am in this realm of momentum, one of the things that gives me such confidence, and this is really important, these carbon ceramic brakes, world's largest production car carbon ceramic brakes, may I reinforce, they give you so much confidence in the stopping power of this car, and you really need it because with the car being able to do over 200 miles an hour, but it weighing, as I mentioned, well over 2 tons, you're gonna want to have the confidence underneath your braking foot. Wow! Surge of energy. Now look, you're still aware of the mass in this car, but it does a game-changing job of disguising its weight. The physics-bending ability of this rear-wheel steer, combined with the 48-volt anti-roll architecture. Now, rather than me just throwing that word out there and hoping that you'll understand what I mean, think of it as a anti-gravity force that runs through the chassis of the Speed, which actually develops more torque than the engine in order to keep the chassis flat through tight corners, which means when I throw it into a sweeping left-hander like this and then a dynamic right-hand change like that, it keeps the chassis incredibly flat. Einstein head-scratching flat. Like that goes against all the maths. I don't know how it's doing it, but it's very, very cool indeed. But what is really cool is that after all of your sportiness, you can put it into comfort and off you waft. And that, I think, is the greatest trick of the Bentley Continental GT Speed. As far as Jekyll and Hyde products from this brand goes, this has definitely got the most extreme character profiles of any of their road-going cars that I've ever experienced, which I think probably answers question 1, 2, and importantly 3. Is this the best 2-door Grand Tourer in the world? I'm trying to think of another car that fits the profile of this. Now, this is up there, isn't it? You've got to think about the likes of an 812 Superfast. Could you compare them? They're so different. In terms of 2-door luxury Grand Tourers, this probably does luxury better. I mean, the interiors of these, it's like stepping into a Linley showroom. It's just an amazing experience to be in an interior like this. Look, is it the best in the world? It's definitely up there. You're comparing this with the best of the best, for sure. 812 Superfast, perhaps a GTC4 Lusso V12. I mean, when you're comparing it with things like that, yeah, it is definitely in the top 0.1%. That's for sure. What we're not putting ourselves in the position of right now is, of course, when you decide to go on a road trip in the winter, and the four-wheel drive of this car comes entirely into its own. So it's probably the most complete two-door Grand Tourer in the world. Is it the best? Probably depends on where you live, if I'm honest. But it's well up there. Without doubt, it would ultimately come down to a flip of the coin or lifestyle preference, but this is well and truly one of the best two-door Grand Tourers in the world. As always, thank you so much for watching. Any questions you've got, leave them in the comments section below. I'd love to spend some more time with this car, and ultimately it'd be great to go grand touring, perhaps waft on down to the south of France, hit the Col de Torini, spend a night in the Hotel de Paris, and gracefully waft on home. And that really, you know, that's what it's all about, isn't it? This thing. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ciao!